I think I'll know.
Okay, I'll shoot you a message.
Thanks.
Hey, folks.
Hello.
Welcome to the VA Coffee Talk. This is our fourth coffee talk of the year, our third program specific one. I was just saying to our one in-person parent, Mary Claire, that
Who's off camera?
this is a new sequence this year. So folks who are joining us remotely, welcome, and also pay attention with us to how the sequencing feels. Is this the right timing for a fall VA coffee talk? Just sort of pay attention to those sort of meta considerations, even as you're sending in questions to Will through Mitzi's email address. So with no further ado, I'll introduce Will Taylor, the director of the VA program. Thank you for being here.
Thanks,
Thanks, Jennifer, Brock, Mitzi.
And I'm actually here as a parent today as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Double duty.
Cool. Thanks. I noticed that I don't know where to look, so I'm going to try to look at the camera. But I am Will Taylor. I'm the director of our visual arts program at UNCSA. I'm going on my 14th year here, and I'll give you a brief outline of our visual arts program, and then we'll get into questions and anything you guys want to know, just send in. But our visual arts program started in around 1970. And if you look at the campus of UNCSA, there are 5 conservatories. And underneath the School of Design and Production is where visual arts happens. And we were started as a feeder program in 1970 to get a young 11th and 12th grade of high school interested in graphics classes and potentially to move into the School of Design and Production. We still do have a lot of students that, periodically filter when they finish with us into the School of Design and Production here on our campus. We also have a lot of students that end up in the School of Filmmaking too. The majority of our students, probably about 70%, when they graduate high school here, do move on to 4-year institutions. A good portion of those are 4-year arts conservatories, like Student College for the Arts in Baltimore, Kansas City Art Institute, Rhode Island School of Design, and the Art Institute of Chicago. So in addition to directing our visual arts program, we have 3 faculty members within what we call VA, Visual Arts, and we are assistant and associate professors for the School of Design and Production. So we also teach the freshmen that are coming in for theatrical design, whether that's wig and makeup, costume design, scene painting. It goes on and on from there. So as you're navigating the website, you should be able to kind of look up visual arts. We are also kind of found through the School of Design and Production as well, and we kind of serve both of those areas. Our faculty, I teach drawing and painting, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about the curriculum. We also have Liz Alexander, who is our sculpture faculty member, and Caitlin Botts, who is our color and design faculty member. And student entering our program can enter as a grader or 12th grader. That process is that you would fill out an application in the fall. It's available online. You'd set up an interview date on campus, and we conduct interviews along with your portfolios in February. And we'll review your portfolio and kind of speak with you and do a critique. It's kind of a full day affair. But if you're interested in our program as a rising 11th grader or a rising 12th grader, contact admissions. And our first year class, which we call our level 1 class, is typically about 23 students. And so I can break that down a little bit later. But some of those students are seniors, they graduate, and the juniors that finish the first year, if they're invited back for the second year, will have a second year experience with us. And that class size is typically a little bit smaller, like right around 12. So our whole program collectively is about 38 students and 3 faculty members. So if anything, I mean, there's a lot more information. I don't want to ramble too much. I think some of that can be filled out just as I'm kind of reading through the questions. And so one of the first questions I think helps set up the structure of our program. And it is, are the current classes full year courses, or do they end at Christmas with new courses beginning in January? And then there's a big thanks exclamation mark from Tori Kim. So our program, it is the curriculum is kind of set up. It is a typical foundation program within the first year. So what that means is all students coming in take a full year of drawing with me. We do function on the semester, but you have, me for drawing first semester in the fall and in the spring. At the same time, you're taking color and design with Caitlin Botts and sculpture with Liz Alexander. So all of those classes, we meet twice a week. And so for my drawing class, I meet on Mondays and Wednesdays. They're 2-hour classes. So you have about 4 hours in class instruction with me. You also have 4 hours in class instruction with Caitlin for design and 4 hours of in-class instruction with Liz. Those classes are taught on the collegiate level. So it's the same curriculum that we're kind of giving our college students. And then in addition to their 3 visual arts classes, they're also taking academic classes. Everybody that is in the first year, that's accepted within the first year, is in the same class. So I mean, like if you're accepted in our program and you start in the fall, you'll have me for drawing the whole year, but your class won't change. And those people that are in your class are the first year visual arts students, the whole class. And they'll move also to design together, to sculpture together. So it's, everybody's kind of working collectively. The classes all go hand in hand. So there's a reason that you're taking those 3 classes. And if you think about the foundation within a visual arts program, drawing begins with composition, and composition is not just enforced within drawing class, but is also enforced within design class. If you're thinking about sculpture, to be able to kind of think 3-dimensionally, you might need to be able to sketch 2-dimensionally first. To be able to draw in a realistic manner, for me in drawing class, you need to be able to kind of see things 3-dimensionally in a space. So the classes are all kind of, although they're separate as far as when they teach and different faculty members, they're kind of working towards kind of a collective good. And the second year, when students return, for the 11th graders, they're returning as 12th graders, they'll also take advanced drawing and painting with me for the whole year, advanced color and design, advanced sculpture. But there becomes a little bit more of like a very specific individual pursuit of how they use their voice in those three classes. So I think that's the first question. Did I just scroll down?
Yes.
Okay, there we go. Space bar. Question number 2 is, my student is a VA1 senior and is interested in the undergraduate animation program at UNCSA. How can she learn more about it? And are there opportunities to speak with the professors in the program? There are, film, the animation program, undergraduate animation program, is through the School of Filmmaking, and Joe Lapina and Stephen Baker, I believe, are the contacts for that. We are underneath the School of Design and Production, like I said before, so we do have kind of a direct connection with those faculty members, and we're actually within visual arts, we're doing a tour of those facilities in a couple weeks. But the main thing would just be if your son or daughter would like for me to make that introduction, for them to kind of let me know, and we can kind of walk over there. We have a lot of visual arts students that have ended up in film and in different capacities. A few of them in animation, a few of them in art direction. One currently that's in screenwriting, that I can't speak for film. I know within the School of Design and Production, though, we've been able to allow some of our seniors to with that faculty on campus, whether that's kind of volunteering in some of the shops or kind of working on smaller projects, as long as it doesn't interfere with their curricular work with us in visual arts. So the opportunities to speak with the professors. So I think the main thing would just be to reach out, and we can kind of line that up. All right. And then number 3, will college advisors be available on Parents Weekend? College advisors, I'm assuming for UNCSA. I don't know.
So Ms. Pallone and I will be available.
Okay.
Ms. Pallone, Adrian Pallone, works specifically with the VA2 students.
Okay.
And we will be here Parents Weekend. Part of Parents Weekend, too, will also be a college application workshop for parents.
Yeah.
Part of the program prior to, right after parent-teacher conferences,
Right.
academic parent-teacher conferences.
Cool. One of the things regarding college advisement for visual arts is we do on that Saturday have a specific session set up for seniors and their parents to speak with the visual arts faculty. And I'll double check the time frame of that, but usually it starts around 3 o'clock. And we go through the whole process of schools that are coming in to look over portfolios with our seniors. It is at this stage we have Kansas City Art Institute, Maryland Institute College of Art, and the Art Institute of Chicago already kind of slated for a Wednesday evening presentation. All of our students are required to attend that. It's about 38 students for an hour presentation from each school. And at the end of that, seniors are able to lay out their portfolios for a one-on-one kind of portfolio review with that representative. That representative in most situations is also the person that will not just be reviewing their official application when it comes in, but will also be an advocate for them for financial aid. And so we talk a lot about over Parents Weekend. The majority of our students, when they leave our program, it's not an issue as far as getting into the school that they want to get into. I mean, there are a couple of exceptions like Cooper Union and Rhode Island School of Design that are, fairly competitive. But it's often being able to afford the school that you want to get into. And a large part of that we address of like putting together your portfolio, what are you looking at financially? What are the options as far as private arts conservatories, liberal arts schools that have really great art programs, letters of recommendation, so we talk a lot about that process on the fine arts visual art. And we work a lot with Brock and kind of trying to figure out what's the best option for the student. Is it a 4-year degree or is it kind of a 4-year liberal arts education? So my background is I'm from North Carolina, and I went to undergraduate at UNC Chapel Hill and got my bachelor's of fine arts in studio art, and that was an option for me financially that made the most sense. It was in-state. I got scholarships. I could kind of take a broad range of classes, and then I saved kind of my conservatory experience for graduate school, and that's more money, but so we try to kind of get a sense of the individual student and their needs for that. So
I just add to that question, and Will's response kind of illustrates how the college planning works for our students, and that high school academics, we're the school of record, and so we handle the transcripts, we handle the counselor evaluations and the school reports, whether it be on the Common App or a school-specific application, and then we rely on the conservatory faculty, and in this case, Will and his faculty, to work with the student on the specifics of continuing their art at the next level and what schools may be a good fit based on their talent and past history of acceptances and scholarships. So there's kind of 2 avenues that students are taking in terms of getting the support they need for college.
And it's an interesting, there are a lot of schools, especially if it's a 4-year arts conservatory, a lot of the weight will be going on their portfolio. And academics do play a role and can help with scholarship. But on the flip side of things, if we're thinking about state, in-state schools, aside from UNCSA and the School of Design at NC State, your portfolio does factor in, you're applying to the university. So it's kind of a different, you're looking at your transcript and your, SAT scores. So trying to kind of figure out, where you're applying and like what the strength is. Is it going to be your academic, transcript? Is it going to be your portfolio? Is there a benefit to both? So and a lot of that, obviously we can kind of address on Parents Weekend. So.
Although that said,
Yes.
I got to jump in on that.
Yeah.
Isn't that getting a little late?
For what?
Figuring out where they're applying?
Well,
Talking seniors?
yeah. So that's why we have the first year when they come in as an 11th graders. That's why we make it a requirement that they attend all the presentations at that point.
Right.
And so the schools that are coming have already spoken to our students once as 11th grader. They've given the full presentation. A lot of our students also take that summer in between 11th and 12th grade to try some of the pre-college programs or do college trips. There is also the National Portfolio Day. And National Portfolio Day, those exist throughout the country, but the one in North Carolina happens in Charlotte in November. All of the institutions are there to review the portfolios. You don't have to be a senior to start up on that. Like you can visit that as a junior as well.
Isn't there another portfolio review day in October? Because it seems like it took us out of her taking the SATs in October.
It's
What was that even?
yeah. I'll double check the
Maybe
dates.
it's a
But
specific school.
yeah, there are some schools like Micah has. Yeah. Yeah, Micah has a portfolio review day. They kind of pop up everywhere. And so that's a really another great option of, let's say you're interested in Micah, but you also want to kind of do portfolio review day. That trip up to Micah for their portfolio review day, so you can visit campus, kind of a sense of Baltimore, and then also speak to other institutions. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the next question is, what support will UNCSA provide for undergraduate art schools, and what do we need to do? What will UNCSA do, and what is the timeline? This is with regards to applications, essays, etc., but also portfolios. Okay. So the schools that are coming in are the schools that students are interested in applying. That kind of they all look a little bit different. And I think like one of the misconceptions is that they're all the same or the same portfolio looks the same for each school. They also have different deadlines, and sometimes there will be kind of, early, kind of an early notice, early decision. Sometimes that decision is a binding decision. It's really important for each student to kind of speak with the representative of that school, the admissions representative for that school. An example of that could be, let's say a school has an early decision, and meaning that the student can get their portfolio together, submit their application, and decide whether or not they get in, or get the notification whether or not they get in. And then some schools will ask them to commit to them. That's not necessarily in their benefit. And so the reason for that is the longer a student can wait, the more diverse they're going to make more work over the course of time. They might apply for the application, but there might be a separate deadline for financial aid. And when financial aid rolls around, they're looking at that first application that maybe you submitted in September. And so even though you got into school, your portfolio is not as strong for financial aid as it could be. And so typically the timeline for us is students will speak with the representatives, build their portfolio, put their applications together over Christmas break, submit them over Christmas break. And by the time spring semester rolls around, we're kind of moving into notification of if you're accepted to that school, but also financial aid notification. As far as what we do, we document all of the work for our students. So if it's a three-dimensional work, that's Liz Alexander in sculpture. If it's two-dimensional, whether it's that is design and drawing and painting, that's documented by Caitlin Botts and myself. And all of those digital files are turned over to each student. And typically around October to shoot. And if there's a pressing deadline before that, we'll move that up or make an exception. The other thing that is important is that there are, when you start to think about opportunities for visual artists, aside from their presentation of their work and the way they talk about their work to a representative, whether it's a representative that comes to our campus or whether it's somebody that they've met visiting a campus or National Portfolio Review, that carries a lot of weight too. It's not just kind of the work and kind of stepping back and not being able to talk about it. It's, the total package of, I've made this body of work and being able to kind of talk through the portfolio. I have kind of a self-assessment and self-awareness of where you want to go as an artist. In addition to that, you're presenting that work, you're presenting your portfolio. There are also 2 competitions that are fairly important for visual arts students in high school, and one is Young Arts and one is Scholastics. And both of those can, if students enter either one of those and are awarded, and Young Arts is sometimes our students are selected as finalists. And Scholastics, there's kind of gold key, silver key on the regional level, and then also the national level. Scholarships can be attached to those, but more importantly, notifying the school admission representative that you placed in Scholastics, or that you were a finalist in Young Arts. That time frame, typically like Scholastics, notification of that is around January. So if a student has together their application over Christmas break, they've submitted it, the school received it, and then in January, they're also kind of notified that they've won kind of a gold key on the national level for their artwork in Scholastics. Students following up with the representative to let them know. It's another thing for that representative to advocate for. And you're just kind of really showing all the aspects that you possess. I would say artist, but just as a ambitious student. And so that you're able to talk about your work, you're able to, compile a professional portfolio, you're entering your work, you're being kind of acknowledged for your work, and that you're responsible. I would say that regardless of if students leave our program and go into fine arts at all, and I would kind of extend this just campus wide, that the students on this campus are extremely mature and responsible and have their act together. So much of it is kind of individually motivated, and really kind of take the lead on that. So as regards to applications, essays, applications, most of that is pretty funny. I've had a lot of parents over the years say that, well, my son or daughter applied to all of these schools and I didn't even know which ones they were applying to. They filled out the applications, they wrote the essays, they did it. They just asked for the fee to pay for the application. So as far as essays, I would say, would that be Doug Bohannon?
Well, actually, that would be myself,
okay,
or Miss Cologne.
Okay.
For the VA2s, it would be Miss Cologne. Also teaches an English 4 section, so she half her time is devoted to, or part of her time is devoted to college work with the VA2s and the drama seniors.
Okay.
So everything that's not the portfolio, really, in terms
Right.
of what those schools needs, like the application, the counselor forms, the school reports, the transcripts, and the essay help. While that essay help can come some from VA faculty or conservative faculty, that's falling on the academic program to make sure it gets taken care of and the
Right.
things get submitted
Yeah.
on time.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that sometimes people, when they're submitting portfolios, they don't think that there's a written component. Just for our program, we ask for an artist statement, and that's the norm from most schools. I mean, if you're submitting a portfolio, they're going to want you to talk about your work. And so that element of how you you an artist statement or talk about your work. I mean, we do that in our program, but also the arts, faculty is happy to assist in that. The other component that I would say regarding portfolios is, sometimes there will be a lot of that is submitted now via Slide Room online. If you're applying to a school, or they have kind of something set up just internally within their website where you would upload your images. And sometimes they'll ask for 10 to 15 images, or sometimes they'll ask for 20 images. Being aware of what that particular school or that particular program is looking for is important, because it can shift and it can change. If you're going to, if let's say you're applying to 2 schools, and maybe one is a school for filmmaking, all right, they might, or maybe it's animation. They might want to see life drawing. They might want to see, photography. They might want to see kind of elements of, color and design and composition. And, that portfolio for that specific program that you're compiling might look very different from another school that you're applying to. So that's where the conversation with admissions reps, whether it's somebody that's visiting our campus or you're visiting their campus, or it's a portfolio review day, taking notes on what, let's say you're applying to 5 schools, what is your portfolio going to look like for each of those 5 schools? Because it might be very different. If there's an opportunity to submit 10 to 15 works in a portfolio, and you have, let's say, 12 really solid and diverse works, and then you have maybe 3 that are just average, thinking about just submitting the 12 strongest ones, not always feeling like you have to submit all of the pieces, because some submitting, maybe work that is not up to par can work against you in a lot of ways too. So, scroll down.
I've got a question that
sure.
kind of tags on to that.
Yeah.
So Lily's been talking about both art schools and liberal arts programs with a strong art department.
Yes.
How the heck do you figure out what those schools are?
Oh man.
Is there a rating service that you would actually trust?
That you actually trust is a good. U.S. News and World Report have kind of a rating each year for art schools, but it's usually based off of graduate programs. But that rating does kind of give you a sense of programs out there that are both public and private. There are schools like Virginia Commonwealth University that are, public institutions but very highly ranked within that. And so they're, even though they're out of state for us, they're also much more affordable than private schools. It's so many things kind of go into that, depending on the student and where they want to be and the facilities and the faculty. And I would say kind of getting an awareness of, I think, one of the amazing things about UNCSA as a campus, again, is that all of the faculty here are completely committed to teaching. And although they also have, really, amazing and established professional careers, they're here for the students. And there are some schools that are ranked fairly high, but they might only hire eds, or they might just have somebody that comes in and teaches a class and then leaves. And you want to make sure that as a student that you're going in, you're getting faculty that's committed to you, facilities that are kind of accommodate what you want to do. And that, you're in an environment that kind of nurtures your needs. So sometimes it is like, well, there's a really highly ranked school, but it might not be the best fit for that student. As far as schools that are in the state of North Carolina, we do have a lot of students that end up at UNC Greensboro, UNC Asheville. There's a slightly different slant and flavor to each program. So I think the great thing about if it's a state-supported school, we always encourage our students to kind of go there on their college visits. I mean, that's one of the reasons. I think if you're looking for kind of a starting point, U.S. News and World Report would be an option. Yeah.
You do slightly trust them.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it's a good starting point. Yeah. it is
Well,
a
and
good-
I'm thinking if they've got an outstanding
Right.
graduate program, they're probably going to have a pretty good
Right.
undergraduate.
Well, and I think, it's not that we have a certain type of student, but I know that students that are in our program for 1 year or 2 years and this environment works for them, there are schools out there that echo this a bit or mirror this a bit. And, I don't want to name names, but, there are also that like you're paying a lot of money and there's not much feedback and you're left to your own devices. I've had students kind of leave institutions basically saying, I can do all of this on my own. I'm not getting the instruction. I'm not kind of getting the kind of, I'm paying a lot of money and I'm not getting much out of it.
Especially the level of
Yeah.
instruction that they've had for high school.
Right. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
going to be a letdown at a lot of places.
It is. Well, and I think like one of the beautiful things about our campus, especially at high school level, is that the numbers are really small too. And so it's a kind of really intimate kind of, class sizes are small, our program is fairly small. And there aren't many schools that when students leave that they have that same exact experience as far as camaraderie with their classmates or kind of their peer group or kind of the push with their peer group. But they're really great programs. I mean, I know a lot of our students have found different places. I'm thinking one student in particular that really loved East Carolina, not for any other reason than the facilities and the faculty were very supportive of them. And it's like, well, maybe I don't want to live in Greenville or like there's all this other stuff that's not appealing, but I'm disciplined enough and I've got faculty that engages me and I've got the facilities that accommodate that. This is a really great school for me. There are a lot of things to kind of take into account too, like with the individual, like if you're looking at graduate school, 4 years, I went to graduate school at Pratt for 2 years and that, taking out loans for 2 years at that school, I'm still paying that back. And so it's, if you're taking out 4 years, do you want to start off with a broader education and maybe major or get like a BFA in studio art or BA in studio art and then kind of see how that plays out? Or are you going to jump straight in and go to a 4-year arts conservatory and maybe not need graduate school? And so one of the questions that is also really important for students to ask representatives is, what's your placement for, graduates when they leave? What are different graduates doing? Are there a lot of assumptions that, well, if you go to art school that you're only going to be kind of making kind of fine art and trying to have a show and be the starving artist, and that's not the case. Especially, opportunities at MICA or Kansas City where there's a broad range of where you take a variety of coursework and that can kind of lead into different career paths.
Do you have a list that you could share of your last few years of graduates and where you've placed them for?
I do. Yeah.
Is that something we could see or you could tell us about?
Yeah. I don't have it on me, but
if you
yeah.
share it with me, I could put it
Certainly.
on the website.
Yeah. And I think aside from the schools that kind of come here, if you go to National Portfolio Day, just even if you go to that website, it has the different areas where it's being conducted, the one in Charlotte. If you click on that in Charlotte, it will also give you a list of the participating schools. And for the most part, the schools that are involved in National Portfolio Day would be the ones that you would be looking at. And schools like Parsons and FT, and some of those schools don't necessarily visit us, but I'd be happy to kind of share that list.
Do you guys send out a survey to your graduates? So like the class of 2017, like where did they end up going? That's the list you're talking about, but what was their experience and are they going back there? Are
Right.
they changing schools?
Right.
Was it worth the money?
Right.
Tone this down.
So I do an informal version of that. Once seniors graduate, we're friends on Facebook at that point. And so that's how I kind of maintain a kind of direct connection of where they are, and just keeping track of where they've been and where they left and why they left there. And, and sometimes, over 14 years, you get some of the same reasons that they leave a certain school. And it might not be necessarily that specific school, but the type of student and what they want and what they expect. Sometimes people bounce around quite a bit. I mean, they might leave fine arts for a little bit and then come back later. Or they might, I ran into kind of a former student over the summer that was at Rhode Island School of Design, and a really great opportunity, but just it was not for him. And so, kind of keeping track of, what's a good fit or where you are at that point in your life. So, yeah. When are the upcoming college workshops, if any? All right. So that's, one of the things that we've decided as a faculty to do this year is usually over the years, I've invited about eight representatives from different fine arts conservatories and institutions to our campus to give the presentations and portfolio reviews. We've trimmed that down a bit, and we have about 4 or 5 institutions speaking this fall. And part of that is we're kind of really focused on the schools that our students are interested in, and that the schools that are interested in our students and that are kind of really great fits for them. There are some schools that, for the most part, like University of North Carolina schools, and you're applying to the university first and foremost. So for them to kind of come and talk about a portfolio, you don't really need a portfolio to apply to that program unless it's UNCSA or the design school at State. It's also an in-state school, so meaning you can get to it pretty quickly, if you need to kind of travel or to kind of do a day trip. So the schools that we do have kind of slotted right now, in 2 weeks, we are going to be speaking with School of Design and Production on our campus, actually going over to DMP and speaking with scene design faculty and wig and makeup, costume design, and Sage Properties, and touring those facilities. We also have the Art Institute of Chicago. We also have Maryland Institute and College of Art. We also have Kansas City Art Institute. And that list, if you have a son or daughter in VA1 or VA2, they have a list of dates. And I've got class this afternoon with both first and second year students. I'll be giving them an updated list of those dates. We found that past couple of since we are taking an evening out and making that required, that it cut into studio time. And the schools that, if we had too many schools, it kind of spread us thin a little bit as far as students really presenting their work. Like they wanted to present 1 or 2 schools, but not to 8. And so a good majority of, the schools that maybe have come to us in the past will be at Portfolio Review Day. And, so that's where we are right now. We're kind of cutting the number in half. So yeah, they start up in the next couple of weeks. So they'll run through September, October, and November. So,
Well, if I just kind of follow up on the academic side of that, we've had 6 workshops. Quite a few VA students have come. We'll start the 3rd round of that next week with 3 workshops, and I think our intention is to focus in on one of. We've done them on Friday. We had a pretty good turnout of VA students, so we'll do another one Friday, probably the midday hour on Friday, 11:30 to 1.
That's
Following Friday, not this Friday, the following Friday, but there'll be 3 workshops next week.
right. And that's, for, parents out there with students currently in our program, Fridays are awesome days for us because the way that our schedule works in visual arts is that there are no studio classes on Fridays. So they just have academics. So if there's a workshop happening outside of their academic schedule, there's no reason they shouldn't be able to attend that.
It's also real important that if you have a VA2 or a senior VA student in general, that they set up a time to see Miss Pallone one-on-one.
Yeah.
I know she has reached out to them and broadcast her availability and encouraged them to do that. So that will
I know
get them
when-
the help they need with everything outside the portfolio.
Right, right.
When my kid did that, the anxiety level went from so high to, I got this. And
Right.
just,
Right.
she got to work on the application. It was good.
All right. Question 6. May students submit work created outside of class to National Scholastics? They can, yes. It does become a little bit tricky in that sense because basically what happens is they need somebody to sign off and sponsor them for that. And if it's a student of ours that is, let's say 11th grade, and they're making it while they're in our program, but it's outside of class, or they member and kind of they would consider their instructor, even if it's a piece that they're doing outside of class, if they're taking classes, they consider their instructor one of us, be able to sign off on that. We would obviously want to make sure that it not only represents that student well, but also represents our program in a way that we feel like has kind of the standards that it needs to have. So that, yes, that has happened in the past. Independent work from students outside of class, we approve of it and they want us to sign and sponsor them. We've done that. There are also sometimes pieces that students have done before maybe they can program. And if that's another instructor, I'm reluctant to sign off on that just because I feel like that initial instructor kind of deserves the credit for that. So we would just need to kind of talk about the work specifically, and it does need a faculty signature. And if the faculty member approves and it's kind of made kind of under the time frame of you being in our program, we would definitely sign off on that for Scholastics. So number 7, wrong way. All right. Number 7, in what ways will you be helping senior VA1 students with their portfolios for college applications? And when would that preparation begin? So that ties in a little bit of what we were saying before, but VA1 students, their portfolios are, let's see, their portfolios right now, since we're just within the first month, they don't really have a portfolio larger than what they applied to our program with. So we're going to continue to build that over the course of the fall semester. The things that they should be kind of keeping in mind would be, well, what are the schools that are visiting, or what are the schools that I'm interested in visiting, or what are the schools that I'm interested in applying to? What are their deadlines? What are their requirements? As far as the portfolios are concerned, they would just need to let the faculty know that they need their work documented and the schools that they're applying to and what deadline. And generally, looking at the dates for that, the applications should be put together probably over Christmas break, unless there's kind of a sooner deadline. But we'll document the work. We can talk to the students about like what they want out of kind of a college experience, what might be the best fit, what final kind of area and kind of range that they're in. And the other thing that I would say is that in looking at that question, helping with VA1 senior portfolios, when would that preparation begin? It begins in them also being able to talk about their work, which happens with, every day in class as far as critiques are concerned. There is an opportunity outside of individual projects. There's an opportunity to step back and get all of your design work together, or get on work together, get all of your sculpture work together, and look at it as a collective, cohesive body of work as opposed to individual assignments. And so that's something that we can do with students, but if we don't do it with them one-on-one, that they should be able to connect the threads, either visual elements that kind of reoccur. Maybe there's a certain shape or certain form that's constantly explored that they're not conscious of, that plays out in sculpture and design and drawing. Maybe there's a palette that kind of pops up that not just of. Maybe there's thematic elements that start to kind of work into the concepts within their pieces. And to be able to talk about a collective, cohesive portfolio in a way other than this is a project I did in drawing. This is, a project I did in color and design, and, kind of isolating them. That's all made out of the same person. Maybe there are different prompts or different guidelines, but where is that individual in the work and in the portfolio as a whole? So, yeah.
You got to be able to talk about it.
It's true. It is really, and I think like that's for me kind of being there. Like I was a really shy kid when I was little. I mean, the fact that I'm teaching now is strange because I was like, so many of our students that we were talking about before, just kind of the kid that fell into the sketchbook and kind of kept to himself. And so, but, the campus and our program is really great about that in the sense of that you're with peers that share that same passion and discipline, and, being able to talk about your work and being able to talk about it in an open-minded way, but a comfortable, confident, and critical way is really important. I would say that in the years, I don't sit in on the conversations with the college admissions representatives, but as much as they are looking at the portfolio, they're looking at the person. And I know that's also true for our program, that we're looking at the portfolio, but also looking at the potential of the person. And so we've had kind of a full range of, applicants in our visual program, applying to our visual arts program, where it might be a student that is talented, but very kind of limited in the range of work that they want to explore, and really kind of quiet and really defensive. And, that might not be a great fit for our program on either end. And then we've also seen applicants that have no formal training, but have done everything on their own, tons of work, super excited, engaged, kind of, just trying to soak up all the information. We see the potential in that applicant. And that carries over for, I would say all of the other schools in college as well. If they see that you have kind of discipline, that you're focused, that you're attentive, you have the skill sets, your ability to kind of talk about the work. It's not just about what's on paper in front of them. So
I'm also so impressed by how you teach them to critique each other and how to take criticism.
yeah.
I mean, that is such a leap in maturity to understand that,
Right.
and not get defensive.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think it's funny sometimes, like we get course evaluations, and one thing that pops up on my course evaluation is Will talks too much. He needs to let us talk more. And it's like, and, so especially moving into spring semester for first VA1 class, and then also second year, so much of that is them driving critiques, and some of the best happen outside of class, just in the studio. Like I'll be moving in and out, and people will be kind of around an easel talking about one another's work, and like none of it's not on scheduled time, it's not prompted, it's just kind of initiated by them. So it's it's also language that once within design, and just all of our classes, but it's really heavy in design. There's this kind of want and desire to talk about work that's visual, but you don't know how to do it in some situations. And once you enable that, like the floodgates just open. It's like, okay, now, we can kind of talk about anything. And it gets a little bit silly at a certain point where we're kind of critiquing everything that is visual in the world, somebody's outfit, well, your colors, or, so that's your ability. I would say that if a student doesn't end up going into fine arts, that idea of presenting a body of work that you've invested like 2 years of your life in, whether it's artwork or whether it's some other type of work, to be able to kind of break it down thoroughly, to present it to somebody with confidence, and to hold your own in talking about that work, that's an important kind of life lesson. And kind of career lesson. And, my advice to students that are applying to representatives is like, let's say you have 15 minutes to talk to this person about your portfolio. You should not be dependent on them asking you questions about your portfolio. If you spent the past year and a half making it, and that drawing alone took you 15 hours to make, there shouldn't be kind of, you shouldn't be searching for things to discuss about it. If anything, they should be listening to you and kind of wanting to end with questions. You shouldn't be dependent on them with questions. So.
Well, as you know, my husband was in the VA program. He's a VA graduate and then went on to, he's now a filmmaker, but he often talks about how that is the single best part of his training.
Yeah.
Was that ability to talk about art. It's seeing first.
It is.
The ability to see and then to articulate it.
Yeah.
And it's a huge thing.
Well, and I think there's so many elements of on the campus, just critique in general, whether it's kind of dance or whether it's, visual arts or whether it's music or, but sitting and reflecting and being kind of having that critical discourse and asking questions and getting somebody else's perspective, seeing your work in relationship to somebody else's work. Sometimes there's critiques are run differently by the faculty. Sometimes people will ask that, well, what are critiques like? Well, in Liz's class are different than they are in my class.
Great.
And you get
learning experience.
Yeah, you get very different kind of, and that's going to continue through college education. But I also think it's, if a class is 2 hours and we go into critique and we're sitting in front of a wall of work, obviously we're kind of thinking about what we're seeing and what we're talking about, but you're also sitting in front of visual work for 2 hours. And like, how many people do that unless it's a TV, sit there and kind of really break something down visually for 2 hours. And it could be maybe your work isn't even discussed in that 2 hour time frame, but you've been sitting at, that wall looking at your work for 2 hours. And so that element of reflection and being kind of open. So, Number 8 is, are there any workshops about preparing or documenting portfolios? And is there assistance with or equipment to help with the documentation and photography or portfolios? Yeah, so we document all the work, as I mentioned before. I just recently ordered Caitlin Botts had requested 8 Canon Rebel cameras for our second year students that we're going to start to allow students to use if they need to document additional work. When we document work, we do that with students and we talk about lighting, set that up so they can do it when they leave us. So it's not just like we do it for them. We kind of do it with them, that is something that, you're always going to be cutting costs. As an artist, you don't want to have to pay somebody else to document your work. You also want to make sure the work's documented the way that you want it presented and taking ownership of that. And let's see, preparing and document and assistance with. So yeah, that's, we do, as far as when we do that with our VA2 classes, I actually use one of my Monday evening classes for that. VA1 seniors, I ask them to talk to me if they want me to document their work, and we kind of line up an individual session with them.
I'm pretty sure that the seniors brought those cameras home on Friday.
Yeah, I bet. That didn't last long. So yeah, I picked them up and I picked them up Monday, dropped them off Tuesday, and they're probably already gone.
And
so
they're distributed.
Yeah. So and I mean, I think like that's the other thing that's been great to see over the course of my career teaching, and I know I'm not the only one here, but the move documentation to digital documentation to students documenting their own work with great cameras and now access to Photoshop. All of our students, as of last year on this campus, access to Photoshop, and Caitlin teaches them Photoshop. So I think one of the things, the great thing about that question is workshops about preparing and documenting is that things aren't just done for the students and turned over to the students, that they're part of that process that they get on their own down the road, and that they're enabled to, they know how to photograph their work in the proper light, in the proper setting. They know how to clean that up. They know how to kind of critically kind of organize and arrange that portfolio. And so much of it is enabling them. So let's see. All right, Mitzi, I think I hit, oh no, I'm good. All right, I'm just going the wrong direction. as a parent who isn't an artist and who is going through the college application process for the first time with my daughter 3 hours away, I find the art school process a bit confusing and overwhelming. And I appreciate in advance any support and assistance you guys can give us. So I'm assuming that maybe that's the application to our program.
I'm getting ready to.
It sounds like application for college.
For any, college in general. Okay. I would say, let's see, application. Yeah, college application. Okay. All of the applications, this is where it starts to break down and look different. And your application to a liberal arts institution, for your college versus a four-year private arts conservatory, they're going to look different. They're going to require different things. So, first that would be one step. Am I applying to a four-year arts conservatory that does a portfolio and an artist statement? The portfolio will work with the student on, and the artist statement will kind of be in response to the portfolio, and we can help write that. The actual application, you guys are
That's falls in the academic program realm.
Right.
With the VA students with Miss Adrienne Pallone.
right.
And of course, I'm happy to assist.
Yeah.
I mentioned the workshops that we've done over the last couple of weeks, and then the one-on-one appointments with Ms. Pallone. Those
Yeah.
are the best ways for the student to get that assistance.
Yeah.
And Adrienne is specifically assigned the VA students and the drama students. So she's working with that particular group and also understands a lot about the particularities of that VA process as
Right.
distinct from the dance students of Brock.
Yeah.
She was also
Right.
excellent in helping to prioritize
Right.
here's what you need to do first,
Right.
then this, then this.
Well, and I also, you've got a lot of support on campus for that. I think it also in this situation, your daughter really, reaching out to the faculty and kind of taking that under her belt. I know as a parent, my son's just started high school this year, and there's certain things that I can do for him and certain things that I can't do for him. And I want to be able to be there for him on every level. But, I think like her taking ownership of that, and then with me or Liz or Caitlin, if there's kind of the fine arts element, our doors are always open. They always have, I don't know how many faculty do this, but every student in our program and every parent in our program has our direct cell phone number, our personal cell phone number. So like if there's a question, we're accessible and available at any point. And they need to have a good understanding of that process as well. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. The confusing and overwhelming part, I completely understand because there's not a universal look. Just speaking for the fine arts conservatories, they're going to be wanting different things in the portfolio. They're going to be wanting different amounts of images. Their application processes are going to be different. There are some schools like Cooper Union or Rhode Island School of Design that have separate tests, like drawing tests and assignments that they give you that other schools don't. So it can be confusing in the sense that it's not homogeneous across the way. It's going to look a little bit different depending on the school. Let's see. What's that?
Thank you.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm going to check.
Okay. Okay. I would say one thing just about the portfolios that maybe I didn't mention before is that, and this applies to our program as students who are coming in, is that some schools like to see not necessarily finished, polished, resolved works. Like it doesn't have to be kind of a large scale varnished oil painting or kind of a pristine, figure drawing. Sometimes it's photographs of your sketchbook. Sometimes it's showing your thought process. It might be, some portfolios might be documentation of your sketchbook, photography, sculpture, life drawing, kind of oil painting, and a broad range of things. So, I think it's really important as you're kind of putting together that portfolio that you show your versatility, your strongest work, and also who you are as an artist and what you're bringing to the table. Okay. All right. My daughter said they can download Adobe Photoshop since enrolled in class. How do we get a code for this? Ooh, question. I need to look in that answer, but that would be a question that Caitlin Botts in design would have.
And
And
Lily just did it. She
Yeah.
took her laptop to Caitlin.
yeah, Caitlin would have that code. And if there's a problem from there, we'll kind of look into it further. The really kind of quick answer might be also to contact IT, because it's my understanding that Adobe Photoshop's open to all students and not
It
specific to
is,
visual
and
arts.
I think you just go in with your UNCSA sign-on credentials, which is your email and your email password, and then you'll be prompted to configure your password, reset, and retrieval information.
Okay.
No, I mean,
Okay.
maybe there's a code
Okay.
specific to students, but I don't.
Cool. I would follow up with Caitlin Botts, and if you want to email her or have your daughter ask her, or you could email me too. So, yeah, cool.
Did we just have you until 2?
2:30.
Yeah,
2:30,
Yeah,
all right.
as long as you need me. So,
I don't know if
I
people
got it.
run out of questions
right,
for you.
right.
Will.
What
We've
else you
asked everything.
got? So, yeah, I don't know.
No, I've found it interesting to visit some of the different art schools. Like
Right.
we went to RISD and SCAD, just very
Right.
different talk about whether they wanted a portfolio with breadth or a portfolio with depth.
Right,
You know,
right.
some were definitely go deep
Yeah.
and some were, we want to see a little bit of everything that you can do.
Yeah. And I mean, you might have both of those, but how you compile it for that specific school kind of plays a big role. And, yeah, I would say the other end of that is like, as you're visiting those schools, it's about the reputation of that school, maybe, that kind of draws you in. Try to sit in on a class, see how the faculty kind of interacts. Is the faculty full-time faculty? Are they graduate students? Are they adjuncts? What's the atmosphere of the kind of students? What are they bringing to the table? What's a critique look like? Do you imagine yourself at that school? Like, I mean, it's always interesting when schools come in and I think back, I'm just turned 44. Like, if I was 18 again, at this day and age, knowing what I know now, like, which school would I go to and why, and where would I want to be? And some people are attracted to, schools like Micah or Baltimore, and some people are kind of don't want to be, near home or even near the East Coast or in a big city, and they want to kind of be on the other side of the country. So,
Lily came home a
Yeah.
month ago from
Yeah.
Warren Wilson saying, "This is perfect. I'll learn to be in. I could transfer to RISD and be a farming fine artist."
nice.
I'm like,
Yes.
okay, I
This
like
works.
how you're thinking.
Yeah, it's good. It is good.
No,
Combine
and
those
Warren
two
Wilson's
worlds.
work,
Right.
RISD's incredibly expensive. So
Right.
I don't know how it'll all shake down, but I like that.
Yeah. Well, and there are schools like you mentioned, like RISD, RISD and Brown, that have dual degrees.
That's what she
You know,
loved. And even
uh,
if you don't take a dual degree,
Yeah.
if you're enrolled at RISD, you can take
Classes.
all of your academics
Yeah.
at Brown.
Yeah.
I mean, as many as there's room in your schedule for, but
Yeah.
that's such a hard place to get into. And then the money part
Right.
of it, and
Right.
it's crazy.
Yeah. And so, man, I'm trying to think. I mean, I'm happy to answer any other questions or
But
talk
I was
about
going to say,
anything.
on that track, then it leaves me wondering, how do we figure out if Warren Wilson's art department, like, is there
Right.
even an art department?
Right. Yeah. I know that we've had students who have gone there to study art. I don't know much
Okay.
about it, but I would just,
I
yeah.
figure we need to hang out in the arts, or she needs to hang out in the arts.
Yeah. 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 Just show up and
Yeah.
see what, check out the scene.
Bring her tent.
Yeah. Well, and I think like when students leave our program, there's sometimes the expectation that the program that they're going to go into is going to be set up for them like ours was, that they're going to kind of run into the same group of people, and the only people that they interact with are going to be all kind of on the same page. And that's not the case. You have to find your community. Like if you go to even like, the 4-year arts conservatories that are much smaller as far as enrollment, there might not be fellow classmates that are pulling their weight. There might be people that are just kind of goofing around and you're not challenged by them, but it's on the student then to kind of find that community of people that are critical thinkers and that push them. And that can be a world of not just visual artists. It could just be kind of bright intellectuals, people that are kind of in the community of that particular city. I think for me, when I went to graduate school, as much as I got out of Pratt, I got out of living in Brooklyn and just the people that I interacted, within that community outside of campus. And that was a learning experience too. So, you want to think about like, it's not just the environment of the institution or the environment of like who's in your specific class. You have to, do you see yourself like really being pushed and challenged and growing in that space? Is that, and it might be a great space for one person, might be an awful space for the other person. So, yeah. So,
Any other questions?
no.
That is it. Thank you. You covered so well.
I did send IT the Creative Cloud
Okay, cool.
account activation question. So even if we break off early, we'll share that answer
Okay,
as part of the posting.
great.
One quick question. It's about weather. I don't know if you guys talk about it.
About what?
There's a question about the hurricane. We have a formal check-in scheduled with the provost office and campus police at 4:00 today, and I'm assuming we'll sort of get our marching orders at this point. Ward Caldwell, the head of student affairs, also mentioned this morning that they're going to be doing a scan of all of the list of students, both high school and college, to make sure that we've identified, which kids are from the affected areas, so that we can reach out to them as well. So I'm assuming I'll hear a lot more at 4:00 today.
I'm glad that you clarified that because I thought that it was parents worried about a hurricane hitting here. We're a little far from the coast. We'll get the weather. We'll get rain.
Yeah, I think this is a potential order of magnitude that there could be the potential for canceling school.
Okay. Has that ever happened before?
Hurricane Fran,
Okay.
96.
In 96.
My first ever inclement weather day. First year teaching.
Hurricane.
What do you think? Are we done?
Good.
Yeah.
Anybody
you
got a
all
question?
for-
You can send them in real
Fire
quick.
away.
You got 30
for
seconds.
participating.
Yeah.
Could pour anybody a cup of coffee?
Wait for help desk. Is fine.
All right. Cool.
That's right.
I don't see it.
He's going for the. Make it worth my while to have made that pot of coffee. Thank you. No, it's good. I forgot the cream. What do I expect? All right.
I almost forgot the cups and sugar.
I've had 2 cups of coffee and I'm going to be scaring people
So
if I have
loud,
another one. So,
You hold a critique of your pumpkin.
right.
You can't?
We could hold a critique.
It'll be a really fast critique.
Yeah.
Be talking double time.
Yep. Yeah.
Look at it.
Class is over. It's only been an hour.
Yeah. Let's move on.
Yeah. Get it really efficient.
Funny.
Mm.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Cool.
Thank you.
We're done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Thanks.
it. Bye.